Palabra. Oh Dios, enséñanos a contar nuestros días, que traigamos al corazón sabiduría. Que Dios le bendiga a usted muy ricamente y le ayude para que usted viva una vida mejor. Amén.
Friday, April 26th, Transworld Airlines wins a partial victory. It's being allowed to sell 3 of its routes to American Airlines. Sales of existing homes are on the upswing, and the country's best television ads are in the spotlight.
This is First Business, Friday.
Good morning from Washington. I'm Bob Beard. The fate of cash-strapped Transworld Airlines is up in the air this morning. The Transportation Department has allowed TWA to sell 3 London routes to American Airlines, but TWA cannot sell 3 others, something CEO Carl Icahn called crucial for TWA's survival. Details from First Business correspondent Jim Nash.
Last fall, TWA offered to sell its 6 lucrative London routes to American Airlines for $445 million. But the Transportation Department blocked the deal as anti-competitive. The flights go into London's Heathrow Airport, the gateway to Europe. Now the government says the 3 best routes from New York, Boston, and Los Angeles may go to American, but TWA must keep the others.
Approving the sale of 3 London routes provides no basis whatsoever for anyone thinking that this somehow will be the end of TWA. The sale would bring substantial new cash to TWA. The prospects for other sales are very real.
Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner acknowledged that TWA and American will probably renegotiate their original deal, which was for all 6 routes. Before the decision was announced, American CEO Robert Crandall told us that this is better than half a loaf.
The routes that DOT says we can purchase are the most important elements of the deal. So the absence of the others is not a mortal problem for us.
TWA owner Carl Icahn has so far rejected proposals by TWA's unions and California billionaire Kirk Kerkorian to buy the airline, a deal that would include all 6 London routes.
I cannot predict with any degree of certainty the long-term future of TWA. I believe this brings to TWA necessary cash to allow them to survive. They still may have to file for bankruptcy and go through the reorganization process.
Skinner took issue with TWA's pilots, who say loss of the 3 London routes to Americans spell the end of TWA. But what's left, he says, are more than 90% of TWA's seat miles for an airline that can still survive. Jim Nash, First Business.
UAL, the parent of United Airlines, says it lost $157 million in the first quarter. The company blames the dismal figures on a big drop in passenger traffic during the war in the Gulf. UAL's profits plunged 71% last year, but that didn't keep CEO Stephen Wolf from becoming America's top-paid executive in 1990. His total income, according to Business Week, $18.3 million. And Delta Airlines is also hurting this morning. It reported an $84 million loss in its third quarter. We'll get a look at the depth of the recession this morning when the government releases its report on economic growth for the first quarter. A panel of economists surveyed by Reuters expects the gross national product to show a decline of as much as 2.5%. And the recession has now been made official. The National Bureau of Economic Research, which is in charge of such pronouncements, says it has decided that the recession began last July. There's a sign that the recession in the housing market may be ending. Sales of existing homes increased by 0.6% last month. It's the first time in more than a year that sales have improved for 2 months in a row. Wall Street headed downhill on a murky outlook for the economy and interest rates. First Business correspondent Larry Butler has details on this morning's financial update. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Well, this is a very good time to take some profits, and they're doing it helped along by the bad economic news and bad earnings and the prospect for a not-so-quick recovery. But a rise in new unemployment claims yesterday, along with those weak earnings reports, contributed to more selling as the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 28.5 points. Investors seem more convinced that the economy is nowhere near a recovery. Wall Street analysts are looking to the Fed to drop interest rates another notch, and the pressure is mounting. Compaq Computer led the computer stocks down, falling 9 3/8 to 52.5 on weak earnings. The more optimistic analysts are still convinced we are going through a mild correction, but the bull market is intact, they say. This morning, the Commerce Department, of course, releases those first quarter GNP numbers and its all-important inflation component. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 28.5 points. Transportation fell almost a point. Utilities a point lower. The New York Stock Exchange Index fell 1 2/3, with volume totaling 167 million shares. The American Stock Exchange Index dropped almost a point. Nasdaq's index fell 2.5. The Standard & Poor's 500 stock index lost 3.5. Bonds closed mixed as investors wait for the Fed to succumb to mounting pressure to lower rates. Many economists, while acknowledging the Fed has been easing since January, are concerned that the velocity, that is the number of times $2 billion of new corporate debt, has hit the market yesterday, and the yield on the Treasury's 30-year bond went up 3 basis points to 8.21%. The bond yield on 3-month Treasury bills fell 3 basis points to 5.80%, down 3 to 5.94 on 6-month T-bills, and the Fed funds rate rose 2 basis points to 5.92%. And that's today's financial update. Bob?
Thank you, Larry. In California, state officials have smashed a ring of scam artists. The suspects allegedly used the Persian Gulf War as a come-on to bilk over 3,000 people out of millions of dollars. More from First Business correspondent John Watkins.
Suspected scam artists in 16 states have been rounded up. They were operating 32 businesses selling bogus oil and gas ventures, promising unwitting investors huge profits from the war in the Middle East. It appears more than 3,500 people may have been bilked of more than $50 million in boiler room operations with central operations in Los Angeles, Dallas, and Salt Lake City. This is the largest coordinated assault by authorities on phone fraud ever in American history. The North American Securities Administrators Association says the pitch was simple. Put up money for at least a 35% profit each year and a promise of royalty payments for the next 20 to 30 years. In raids across the country, more than 200 boxes of documents weighing more than a ton have been seized, and that's expected to help lead to charges of securities fraud, telemarketing registration violations, and grand theft. John Watkins, First Business.
Coming up next on First Business Friday, we'll see where global financial markets are headed on this final trading day of the week, and we'll look at how competition is turning up the heat in the electric power industry.
First Business, brought to you by Volkswagen. Try the European driving experience we call Fahrvergnügen, only in a Volkswagen.
Take your average family trip, but take it in a not-so-average family car, the new Volkswagen Passat. The Passat wagon comes with 4-wheel disc brakes. It's got plenty of room for your family, and best of all, Fahrvergnügen, which means you might even forget you're driving a family car.
Are we there yet?
Well, maybe not. Fahrvergnügen, it's what makes a car a Volkswagen. Nice logo, too.
Even the king has to follow orders sometimes. The bank has ordered Ray Harris King Nissan to reduce inventory now. Over $7 million in new cars and trucks must go, and no payments till March. King Nissan, the Midwest's largest selling Nissan dealer, is ordered to accept any reasonable offer on Sentra, Stanzas, Maximas, 240SXs, and 300ZXs, pickups, 4x4s, and vans. All colors, all options, immediate delivery, no payments till March. The bank ordered a $7 million clearance. You may never buy a new Nissan for less. Ray Harris King Nissan, 5757 West 2E in Niles.
Acting has been an interesting and challenging career, but nothing is more important in my life than the challenge of raising the 10 beautiful children I've adopted. Right now, there are thousands and thousands of special young people in need of permanent homes and for someone to love them. Raising children isn't always easy, but the benefits are beyond compare. Adoption works for everyone. If you would like more information on how to adopt a special child, please call this number.
Rupert Murdoch has reportedly worked out a deal to sell most of his American magazines. An investment partnership controlled by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts is paying about $600 million to buy the Murdoch Magazine Group. KKR was involved in the recent purchase of the failed Bank of New England. Murdoch is selling such popular publications as 17, New York, Soap Opera Digest, and The Racing Form, but not TV Guide. On global markets this morning, trading was described as listless in Japan in anticipation of a holiday on Monday. We get the latest from our First Business correspondents in Tokyo, London, and Frankfurt.
The dollar was up marginally and Tokyo stock prices gained. Dealers were reluctant to take big positions ahead of a meeting Sunday of the world's major industrial powers, and the dollar inched up 0.07 yen to close at 137.87 yen. Traders getting ready for the big Golden Week holiday season stood back and let bargain hunters move share prices higher. The Nikkei closed up 84.82 points to 26,123.68. In Tokyo, Mike Knoll, First Business.
In London, share prices are mixed at the outset. Once again, New York setting the mood after its 28-point fall last night. In First Business, winners, losers, and stay putters were balanced about equally. Keeping business at a low volume is economic uncertainty on both sides of the Atlantic. The UK is said by some to be facing a deeper recession than the government is admitting, while the US is reckoned to be climbing out of its downturn. In London, Derek Grant, First Business.
The stronger dollar helped trigger a rally on German exchanges yesterday. The bullish sentiment began in the bond market and carried over to stock exchanges early in the session. Foreign buyers were reportedly the most active. The head of Germany's central bank is very much opposed to lower domestic interest rates. In response to British comments that Germany's rates were upsetting the EMF mechanism, the bank chief said world instability and domestic inflation are ruling out any decrease in German interest rates. In Frankfurt, I'm Peter Dallay, First Business.
Your local electric company, long a regulated monopoly, may soon be feeling the heat of competition. First Business correspondent Warren Corbett reports on the pressures that could transform the electric power industry.
Use as much electricity as a city of 100,000 people.
We've just recently closed a mill in California, and one of the most significant factors there was the high cost of electrical energy. It's essentially 50 to 75% higher than other locations around the country.
In addition to building mills where power is cheap, Todd wants to bring cheap power to his mills, wherever they are.
We very candidly would like to be able to buy power in a low-cost area and be able to put it in the transmission system with the grid system around the country to move it to areas where we're using a significant amount of power.
Industry sources say legislation will be introduced in Congress to allow large industrial customers to do just that, import power from distant generators. That proposal is part of the harsh wind of competitive change whistling through the electric power industry. Former utility CEO Jerry Geist.
So they are now in a new competitive boxing match, an energy boxing match with one hand tied behind them, trying to fight an unregulated competitor, and they're regulated.
In a few states, utilities have to bid against independent power producers for permission to build new generating plants. And in some cases, utilities acknowledge they can buy power cheaper than they can produce it. But utility executives say they face unfair competition from independents.
In plops a non-utility generator that says, uh-oh, I can supply a little bit cheaper because I don't have to make sure I'm going to be here forever. But maybe the public is willing to accept a little bit more risk for a little bit cheaper price.
The independent power industry could get a boost from President Bush's proposed national energy strategy. The president wants to free independent producers from some regulation to encourage competition in electric power. Warren Corbett, First Business.
The Commonwealth of Virginia is getting adventurous with its public employees pension fund. But don't worry if you live in the Old Dominion. Next week, Virginia is putting $100 million into commodity futures. Depending on how the trades come out, Virginia may place a whopping 5% of its pension assets in commodities. Now from Chicago, First Business correspondent Don Peterson has this morning's first look at where commodity futures may be headed today.
The grain market was pressured by steady selling throughout the day, and with the exception of nearby corn, closing prices were lower. Light commercial buying supported corn during the final minutes of the session. The volume was light and trading ranges were narrow. Soybeans were slightly lower, although a firm tone on European markets kept the floor under prices. The first wheat has been harvested in southern Texas, but it will be next week before any large-scale harvest will begin. Meat futures were mixed in lackluster trading at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Fed cattle sales were steady, but